I stood in front of the mirror, my hands shaking as I fixed the last button of the suit. It wasn't even mine. It belonged to Mason, my twin brother, the golden one the world loved without trying. The suit was tailored to his body, not mine. Still, when I looked at my reflection, I almost looked like him. Almost. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mason. Please, Micah. Just cover for me until I get back. Back from where? Why wasn't he here? Why was I wearing his wedding suit? I stepped back from the mirror and sat on the edge of the hotel bed, fighting the urge to run. The ceremony was starting in less than 20 minutes, and my brother, the groom, was nowhere to be found. I pressed my palms to my face and breathed slowly. If I didn't walk down that aisle, the Vance and Hale families would pull the contract, the business deal would collapse, and Mason would never forgive me. This marriage wasn't about love. It was about preserving a partnership between two powerful companies. I didn't even know Sebastian Hale personally. I'd seen him once, from far away, during a business dinner. Tall, intimidating, silent. The kind of man who didn't have to speak to command a room. And today, I was supposed to stand next to him and pretend to be someone I wasn't. There was a gentle knock on the door. "Mike, Mason? It's time," someone called softly. I froze. Everyone thought I was Mason. They had to. My legs felt weak as I stood up. My heart thudded hard against my ribs when I walked out of the room and followed the wedding coordinator toward the garden. Soft music filled the air, and hundreds of guests turned to look at me. I swallowed the panic. Mason asked me to cover for him. He promised he'd come back. I stepped onto the aisle. Every breath I took felt stolen. At the end of the walkway, Sebastian stood tall in his black suit, his posture strict and elegant. His eyes were sharp, unreadable, and when he looked up and saw me, thinking I was Mason, his expression softened just barely. He looked relieved. I didn't know if that hurt or comforted me. My steps slowed when I got closer. Sebastian extended his hand. His fingers brushed mine, warm and steady. "Ready?" he asked softly. His voice was deeper, steady, assured. I nodded, even though my throat closed up. I wasn't ready. Not for this. Not for him. Not for the lie that was about to bind us together. The ceremony began. I heard the words, but they sounded far away, like someone else's life echoing in my ears. When the officiant said, "You may exchange rings," my hands trembled so much Sebastian had to take mine gently. "Breathe," he whispered, low so only I heard. His thumb brushed my knuckles, and warmth shot through me unexpectedly. I shouldn't have felt anything. This wasn't my wedding. This wasn't my husband. But his touch felt grounding. When he slid the ring onto my finger, a quiet gasp escaped me. It was cold, heavy, too real. And then the final words came. "I now pronounce you husbands." Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Future business deals locked into place. And just like that, I was married to a man who didn't even know my name. The applause rose around me like a roaring wave, loud enough to swallow every thought I had left. It didn't feel like celebration. It felt like the slam of a cage door. Sebastian's hand, which had felt grounding just moments ago, now felt like a manacle, tethering me to a life that wasn't mine. His touch, warm and steady, suddenly burned against my skin, branding the lie deeper. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, his voice steady in a way that made my stomach twist. "We have to walk back." I nodded because my throat was too dry to trust. My legs carried me on autopilot, moving down the same aisle I had walked minutes earlier with trembling hope. Now, every step felt like a march to my own execution. I kept my eyes forward, a fragile smile fixed on my face even as my vision blurred. Every flash of a camera felt like a lightning strike exposing the fraud in the center of this beautiful, terrible scene. The reception was a nightmare wrapped in gold and champagne. One photo op to another, one fake smile after the next. Sebastian's arm stayed around my waist, firm and protective. The first time his hand settled there I flinched, the wrongness cracking through me. His grip tightened slightly, a subtle reassurance he thought I needed. "Just a little longer," he murmured for my ears only. "Then we escape the vultures." If only he knew. The guests weren't the danger. The cage was. We were finally seated at the sweetheart table, 2 thrones built for a king and a husband I wasn't. Sebastian poured me water with quiet efficiency, the platinum ring on his finger catching the light. His twin on my hand felt impossibly heavy. "You're quiet," he observed, studying me with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "Not like yourself." My heart slammed painfully against my ribs. Not like him. Not like the twin he married. Just overwhelmed. I managed, the lie rough on my tongue. He nodded, thoughtful, almost curious. "It's a lot. The merger, the families, all these eyes." He gestured slightly with his glass. "Even for us." The word merger hit like a punch. A reminder that this marriage wasn't love. It was business. 2 families intertwining empires. And I was the faulty replacement. Then came the first dance, my personal hell. Sebastian stood and offered me his hand, his expression carefully formal. My palm was cold in his warm grasp. As he led me onto the empty dance floor, the spotlight made me feel exposed, naked in my lie. His hand settled on the small of my back, and I felt a new spike of panic. I had no idea how Mason danced. Confident? Reckless? Did he lead or follow? Sebastian expected me to follow. He pulled me close, not fully, but close enough that the heat of him seeped through the wool of our suits. The room blurred away. There was only the music, the soft scent of sandalwood and crisp bergamot from his cologne, and his steady hand guiding me. "Relax," he whispered, voice a low vibration against my chest. "I've got you. And God help me." I believed him. My frantic heart slowed, sinking with the slow, aching song. I let myself soften into his lead, my forehead dipping close to his jaw. For one terrifying, beautiful moment, the lie didn't exist. I wasn't the wrong twin. I wasn't a stand-in. I was just a man swaying in the arms of someone who felt like home. The spell broke with a booming voice. "Cutting in." A broad-shouldered man clapped Sebastian's back, grinning with predatory charm. "Let someone else dance with the beautiful groom. You can't keep him all night." Sebastian's grip tightened for a heartbeat before he released me. "Of course, Alex." He turned to me, eyes asking a silent question. "Mason, this is Alex Sterling. An old friend." Alex Sterling, Mason's childhood rival. The one he complained about every time he drank too much. Cold fear slid down my spine. Alex swept me into a more theatrical hold, firmer, more possessive. "So you finally did it. Tied yourself to the great Sebastian Hale." His smile didn't reach his icy blue eyes. "You're playing the blushing groom surprisingly well, Mace. Never thought I'd see you letting someone else lead." I forced a laugh that scraped my throat raw. "Well, it's a day full of surprises." His gaze swept over me slowly, lingering on my eyes, my mouth, hunting for cracks. "Isn't it? You seem different today. Softer, almost shy." He leaned in, whispering, his breath cold against my ear. "It's almost like I'm dancing with the wrong brother." My foot stumbled. I pitched forward. He caught me too smoothly. "Careful, Mason," he murmured, the name sharp and deliberate. "You wouldn't want to fall in front of all these people." He knew, or he suspected, and he was enjoying the game. When the song finally ended, I fled. I muttered an excuse I didn't even hear myself say and pushed through the crowd, through the French doors and onto the terrace. I gripped the cold stone railing, gulping fresh air, trying to erase the feel of Alex's knowing touch. The lie was cracking already, and he was the first hammer. I don't know how long I stood there before the door opened softly behind me. I didn't turn. I felt him. Sebastian's presence steadied the air, calming and terrifying me at once. He stepped beside me, silent, watching the city lights spread across the night, hands in his pockets, elegant and unreadable. Then he spoke, voice quiet but cutting straight through me. "When your brother gets back," he said calmly, "we're going to have a very long talk." My world stopped. I turned slowly, breath frozen, heart pounding painfully. He looked at me then, not angry, not shocked, not betrayed, just certain. He knew. He had known all along. The world did not just stop. It shattered. The elegant terrace, the twinkling city lights, the faint echo of music from the ballroom. It all dissolved into a meaningless blur. The only thing in sharp, terrifying focus was Sebastian's face. His expression not of fury, but of a calm, unnerving certainty. He knew. The two words echoed in the silent chamber of my mind, a death knell for the fragile reality I'd built over the last few hours. He knew. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. What could I possibly say? I'm sorry? It was my brother's idea? Every excuse withered and died before it could reach my lips. I could only stare at him, a deer paralyzed in the headlights of his quiet, devastating gaze. He didn't press. He didn't demand an explanation. He simply watched me, as if giving me space to implode, which I was rapidly doing. The carefully constructed composure I'd worn like Mason's suit crumbled into dust. My shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of me completely. How? The word was a broken whisper, torn from the raw depths of my throat. Sebastian turned fully to face me, leaning back against the stone balustrade. The movement was effortless, a study in controlled power. The moment you stepped onto the aisle, I flinched. That early? Mason walks like he owns the ground beneath him, he continued, his voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. His chin is up, his shoulders are back. He looks at people as if they are chess pieces. His eyes, dark and fathomless in the moonlight, swept over me. You walked like you were apologizing for taking up space. Your eyes were wide. You looked lost. Each word was a precise, gentle stab. He had seen me, not the mask but me, and he had said nothing. Why? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of shame and a bizarre, aching hope. Why did you go through with it? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. The contract is binding, regardless of which Vance twin is at the altar. The merger was the priority. The business magnate cold and practical. But then his gaze softened, just a fraction. And I was curious. Curious, I repeated, bewildered. About the brother no one ever sees, he said softly. The one Mason only ever mentions with a dismissive wave of his hand. I wanted to see who you were. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. All this time I thought I was the one living a lie, but he had been conducting his own quiet experiment. I was a specimen under a microscope, and he had been watching my every flinch, every nervous tremor. So, this? I gestured weakly between us, at the wedding rings that gleamed in the pale light. This was all just, what? A game to you? No. His answer was immediate and firm, leaving no room for argument. The vows I spoke were real. The commitment I made was real. It was just made to the man in front of me, not the one I was supposed to be standing across from. My heart, which had felt like a block of ice in my chest, gave a painful, hopeful thud. It was the most confusing, beautiful, and terrifying thing anyone had ever said to me. What happens now? I whispered the core question. Now, he said, pushing off the railing and closing the small distance between us. He didn't touch me, but his proximity was its own kind of force field. We go back inside. We play our parts for the rest of the night. We smile, we dance, we thank our guests. We present a united front. And after, I pressed, needing to know the shape of my doom or my salvation. After the last guest leaves, he said, his voice dropping to that low, intimate rumble that seemed to vibrate in my very bones. You and I are going to our penthouse suite. And you, Micah, he said my name, my real name, for the first time, and it sounded like a prayer and a promise on his lips, are going to tell me everything, starting with where the hell your brother is. The door to the terrace opened, spilling out a slice of light and laughter. A tipsy uncle waved. There you are. The cake is about to be cut. Don't want to keep tradition waiting. Sebastian's public mask slid back into place effortlessly. He offered me his arm, a perfect picture of a doting groom. His eyes, however, held mine, waiting. This was the test. Could I walk back into that lion's den, knowing what I knew? Could I play my part, now that the director had revealed he knew I was an understudy? Swallowing the lump of fear and the strange, budding tendril of hope, I placed my hand on his arm. His muscles were solid and reassuring beneath the fine fabric. "Ready?" he asked, the same question from the altar, but now it was layered with 1,000 new meanings. I looked at the man who saw through me, who had married me under a false name yet claimed the vows were real. The world was tilting on its axis, but for the first time since I'd put on this suit, I didn't feel like I was going to fall. "Yes," I said, and I almost believed it. We walked back into the light, husband and husband, bound not just by a lie, but by a secret now shared. The rest of the reception was a surreal, out-of-body experience. With the truth hanging between us like a shared secret, a strange shift occurred. The panic that had been my constant companion since I'd buttoned Mason's suit receded, replaced by a hyper-awareness of Sebastian. I watched him now with new eyes. I saw the subtle way he deflected questions that were too pointedly about Mason's past. I felt the slight pressure of his hand on my back, no longer a possessive claim but a silent signal. "Steady. I'm here." He was no longer a stranger I was deceiving. He was my accomplice in this bizarre charade. When we finally, mercifully, cut the cake, a towering monstrosity of fondant and falsehood, and pretended to feed each other a bite, our eyes met. A flicker of understanding passed between us. This was a performance, and we were now its lead actors, reading from a script only we knew. The send-off was a blur of rice and cheers. We were ushered into a waiting Blacktown car, the door closing with a soft, final thud that severed us from the world of the wedding. The silence inside the car was deafening. I sat pressed against the window, as far from him as the spacious leather seats would allow, my body thrumming with a nervous energy. I could feel his gaze on me but couldn't bring myself to look back. The city lights streaked past, painting his sharp profile in fleeting strokes of gold and shadow. He didn't speak. He simply let the silence stretch, a man comfortable in his own power, waiting for the walls to crumble. And mine were ready to fall. The car slid up to a glittering high-rise, a monument of steel and glass that pierced the sky. A doorman in immaculate livery opened our door. "Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale," he said with a deferential nod. The double greeting, meant for one man, twisted my stomach. We rode the private elevator to the penthouse in a silence so thick I could hear the frantic beat of my own heart. The doors opened directly into the suite, and my breath caught. It was stunning, vast, minimalist, and achingly elegant. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic, postcard-perfect view of the sleeping city. Everything was shades of charcoal, cream, and silver. A world of cool, controlled beauty. It was so perfectly Sebastian. And I, in my brother's ill-fitting suit, felt like a splash of mud on a pristine canvas. Sebastian walked in as if he owned the place, which he undoubtedly did, and shrugged off his tailored jacket, draping it over the back of a sleek, modern sofa. He loosened his tie, the first unstudied movement I'd seen from him all night, and turned to face me. "The suit," he said, his voice calm. "Take it off. It's been suffocating you all day." The command was so simple, so direct, it bypassed my anxiety. My trembling fingers went to the buttons of the waistcoat, fumbling to be free of the constricting fabric. I shed the waistcoat, then the tie, dropping them on a nearby chair like a shed skin. I stood before him in just the crisp white dress shirt and trousers, feeling terrifyingly exposed, yet somehow more like myself than I had all day. He gestured to the sofa. "Sit. Would you like a drink?" I shook my head, perching on the very edge of the cushion, my spine rigid. He poured himself a finger of amber liquid from a crystal decanter but didn't sit. He stood by the window, a silhouette against the city lights, giving me space while still dominating the room. "Start from the beginning, Micah," he said, and the sound of my name again sent a shiver through me. "The last time you saw your brother." I took a shaky breath, my eyes fixed on the intricate pattern of the rug. The truth tumbled out, halting and raw. "It was this morning. He came to my apartment. He was frantic. He said he couldn't do it, that the pressure, the merger, the permanence of it all was a cage. He said he needed a few days, a week at most, just to clear his head." I chanced a glance at Sebastian. His expression was unreadable, his profile carved from stone. He begged me, Sebastian. He said if I didn't stand in for him, the deal would collapse. He said our parents would never forgive him, that your family would never forgive ours. My voice broke. He said I was the only one who could do it, the only one who looked enough like him to make it work. And you agreed, Sebastian stated, his tone flat. What choice did I have? I whispered, the plea evident in my voice. He's my brother. Sebastian turned from the window, his eyes capturing mine. And what about you, Micah? Did anyone stop to think about what this would do to you? To be thrown to the wolves as a sacrificial lamb in a suit that doesn't fit. The unexpected empathy in his words was my undoing. A hot tear escaped, tracing a path down my cheek. I quickly wiped it away, ashamed. I'm the disposable twin, Sebastian, I said, the words tasting of a lifelong bitterness. The quiet one, the artist, the one who doesn't matter in the boardroom. This was the one time I could actually be useful to the great Vance legacy. The one time I could be Mason. The silence that followed was heavy. He finally moved, walking over to the sofa. He didn't sit beside me, but knelt in front of me, bringing us to eye level. The act was so profoundly intimate, so disarming, that I stopped breathing. He reached out, his fingers gently tilting my chin up, forcing me to meet his gaze. His touch was warm, real. Look at me, he commanded softly. You are not disposable, and you are nothing like your brother. His thumb brushed away the remnants of the tear from my cheek, a gesture so tender it shattered the last of my defenses. Mason would have never had the courage to walk down that aisle for someone else. He would never have had the vulnerability to look as lost and beautiful as you did. His dark eyes searched mine, intense and sincere. He sent a stand-in, but he accidentally sent an upgrade. My breath hitched. I was falling into the depths of his gaze, drowning in a truth I had never dared to hope for. Where is he now? Sebastian asked, his hands still cupping my jaw. I don't know, I admitted, my voice a hushed confession. He blocked my number after he sent the last text. Cover for me until I get back. That was all. Sebastian's jaw tightened, a flicker of cold anger finally showing in his eyes. But it wasn't directed at me. It was for Mason, for the brother who had abandoned us both. He stood up, breaking the spell. Then until he decides to grace us with his presence, he said, his voice regaining its businesslike edge, though his eyes remained soft on me. This is the situation. You and I are legally married. The merger is secure. He paused, looking at me as if I were the most complex and fascinating puzzle he'd ever encountered. The question now is, what do we do about it? I had no answer. My mind, exhausted from a day of relentless panic and shocking revelations, was a blank slate. All I could do was look up at Sebastian, my expression surely mirroring the lost, overwhelmed feeling inside. He seemed to read my utter depletion. The intensity in his gaze softened into something pragmatic, almost gentle. The first thing we do, he said, his tone shifting from CEO to caretaker, is get you to bed. You look like you're about to fall over. He didn't wait for a reply. He turned and walked towards a hallway leading away from the main living area. This way. I followed him, my legs moving on autopilot, down a wide corridor lined with minimalist art. He stopped at a door and pushed it open, revealing a guest room. It was as impeccably decorated as the rest of the penthouse. A large bed with crisp, white linens, more floor-to-ceiling windows, an ensuite bathroom. It was a 5-star hotel room, beautiful and utterly impersonal. This is yours, he stated. The bathroom is stocked. You'll find sleepwear in the drawer. They should fit you better than that suit. He gestured to the clothes I was still holding. Get some rest, Micah. We'll talk more in the morning. He gave me a final unreadable nod and closed the door, leaving me alone in the silent, opulent room. The solitude was a relief and a torment. I stripped off the remainder of Mason's wedding clothes, feeling a physical wave of liberation as I let the fabric pool on the floor. In the bathroom, I found the promised sleepwear, soft, dark gray cotton pants and a matching t-shirt. They were simple, expensive, and felt like my own. I slipped into the impossibly comfortable bed, the city lights casting long, shifting shadows across the room. I expected sleep to be impossible, for my mind to race with visions of Sebastian's knowing eyes, Alex's smirk, and Mason's desperate texts. But the emotional toll of the day was too great. The moment my head hit the pillow, a deep, black exhaustion pulled me under, and I knew no more. I woke to the sound of quiet movement and the rich, enticing aroma of coffee. Sunlight streamed into the room, painting bright rectangles on the floor. For a single, disorienting moment, I had no idea where I was. Then, memory returned in a crushing wave. The wedding, the confession, Sebastian. I sat up, my heart already beginning its familiar frantic rhythm. Pushing back the covers, I padded softly to the door and opened it a crack. The scene in the open-plan living area was so domestic it felt like a hallucination. Sebastian was there, dressed not in a suit, but in dark, well-fitted trousers and a simple black sweater that clung to his shoulders. He was standing by a state-of-the-art espresso machine, pouring a shot into 2 porcelain cups. He looked different, softer. The sharp, corporate edge was filed down. He was just a devastatingly handsome man making coffee in his stunning home. He looked up as my door creaked, his eyes finding mine immediately. "Good. You're awake. Coffee?" I nodded, wordlessly, and crept out into the room, feeling like an intruder. I hovered near the sofa, unsure of where to place myself in this new, morning after reality. He brought over the 2 cups, handing one to me. Our fingers brushed during the exchange, and a jolt, warm and electric, shot up my arm. I carefully took a sip. It was perfect, rich, strong, and bitter. "Did you sleep?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen island and studying me over the rim of his cup. "Surprisingly, yes," I admitted. "Like the dead." "Good." He took a slow sip. "We have a situation to manage today." The CEO was back. The brief, soft interlude was over. "What kind of situation?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "The press has the wedding photos. The news of the successful union between the Hale and Vance heirs is the lead business story this morning." He said it without inflection, a simple statement of fact. "There will be expectations, appearances to maintain." "What does that mean?" I whispered, dread coiling in my gut. "It means," he said, setting his cup down with a definitive click, "that we cannot hide in this penthouse. The world believes Mason Hale and Sebastian Hale are on their honeymoon. We need to be seen. Together." The thought of going back out there, of pretending again, made me feel sick. "Sebastian, I don't think I can." "You can," he interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "And you will, because this time you won't be pretending to be Mason." He pushed off the island and walked towards me, stopping just a few feet away. "This time you will be yourself, Micah Hale, my husband." The word, in the clear light of day, was a shock to my system. "Husband. Our first public appearance," he continued, his gaze steady on mine, "is a charity brunch at the Grand Heritage Hotel in 2 hours. It's high profile, full of the same people who were at the wedding. They will be watching us closely." Panic flared. "A brunch? Sebastian, everyone will be looking at me. They'll know." "No, they won't," he said, a hint of a ruthless smile playing on his lips. "They'll see what they expect to see. A happily married couple. The difference is, this time, I will be by your side. Not as your mark, but as your partner. We face them together." He reached out and straightened the collar of my t-shirt, his knuckles grazing the skin of my neck. The touch was possessive, deliberate. "Go take a shower," he instructed, his voice dropping. "There are clothes for you in the wardrobe. Wear the navy blue sweater. It will make you feel more confident." He paused, his eyes holding a glint of something fierce and protective. "And remember, from this moment on, the only person you have to be is you. The world just doesn't know it yet." He turned and walked back to the kitchen, leaving me standing there, my coffee cooling in my hands, my skin still tingling from his touch. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but beneath it, for the first time, sparked a tiny, defiant flame. He believed I could do this. He was asking me to be me. And that was a role I was desperate to finally play. The navy blue sweater was, as Sebastian had predicted, a soft, cashmere armor. Paired with tailored gray trousers that actually fit my slimmer frame, I looked in the full-length mirror and for the first time, didn't see a cheap imitation of my brother. I saw myself, polished, nervous, but undeniably me. When I walked back into the living area, Sebastian was waiting by the elevator, checking his watch. He looked up, and his gaze swept over me from head to toe. A slow, appreciative smile, the first genuine, unguarded one-eyed scene from him, touched his lips. "Perfect," he said, the single word sending a warm flush up my neck. "You look—" He seemed to search for the right word, his eyes lingering on mine. "Authentic." The car ride to the Grand Heritage was a study in quiet solidarity. My knee bounced with nervous energy. Sebastian, observing my fidgeting, reached over and placed his large, warm hand over mine, stilling it. "Breathe, Micah," he said, his voice low. "Remember the plan. You are my husband. You are yourself. If anyone speaks to you, answer as yourself. I will handle the rest. What if someone asks me a specific question about Mason's life? Something I wouldn't know? Then you look at me," he said, his thumb stroking a slow, soothing circle on the back of my hand. "And I will answer. My husband is a private man. They will accept that." The ballroom of the Grand Heritage was a sun-drenched sea of linen, champagne flutes, and the low, sophisticated hum of the city's elite. The moment we stepped through the doors, a hush seemed to fall over our immediate vicinity, followed by a wave of bright, curious smiles. We were the main event. Sebastian's hand found the small of my back, a firm, guiding pressure. He leaned in, his lips close to my ear. "Head high, my love. Smile. My love." The endearment, surely for the benefit of our audience, nonetheless sent a jolt straight to my core. I followed his lead, letting a small, hopefully convincing smile touch my lips. We were immediately swarmed. Well-wishers, business associates, society matrons, all offering congratulations. I let Sebastian take the lead, as promised. "Sebastian, Mason, congratulations!" A portly man boomed, clapping Sebastian on the shoulder. "Thank you, Charles," Sebastian said smoothly, his hand never leaving my back. "We're very happy." Charles turned his attention to me. "And Mason, my boy, never thought I'd see the day you'd settle down. You've been quite the elusive bachelor." I felt my smile tighten. This was it. I opened my mouth, unsure of what would come out, but Sebastian squeezed my waist gently. "He's not elusive with me, Charles," Sebastian interjected, his tone light but firm, a playful glint in his eye. "Just selective. I'm a very lucky man." He deftly steered the conversation to Charles's recent golf tournament, and the moment passed. Again and again it happened. A probing question, a mention of Mason's past, and Sebastian was there, a graceful, impenetrable shield. He never lied. He simply reframed everything around us, around the man he was presenting to the world, me. And through it all, his touch was constant. A hand on my back, his fingers lacing briefly with mine as we accepted a glass of champagne, his arms sliding around my waist as we were introduced to a group of investors. Each touch was a silent message. "I'm here. You're safe. You're doing perfectly." And slowly, miraculously, I began to believe it. The paralyzing fear began to recede, replaced by a dawning sense of belonging. With Sebastian by my side, the act didn't feel like an act anymore. It felt like a partnership. We found ourselves momentarily alone by a large potted fern near the window. The morning sun cast a halo around Sebastian's dark hair. "You see," he murmured, looking down at me, "you're a natural. They adore you. They adore the idea of me," I corrected softly, looking out at the crowd. "They adore Mason." He shook his head, his gaze intense. "No, they're responding to you, your quiet grace, your genuine smile. Mason's charm is a flamethrower. It's bright and hot and burns out quickly. Yours," he paused, his voice dropping, "yours is like sunlight. It's steady. It warms everything it touches." My breath caught in my throat. No one had ever seen me that way. No one had ever looked past the other twin, labeled to see something valuable. Before I could form a response, a familiar, chilling voice sliced through the air. Well, if it isn't the happy couple. Still playing house, I see. Alex Sterling stood before us, a smirk twisting his handsome features. His eyes, cold and assessing, landed on me. You're still here, Micah? I'm surprised. I thought you'd have scurried back to your art studio by now. The world froze. He'd said my name, loudly, and called me an artist. The carefully constructed facade teetered on the brink. But before the panic could fully take hold, Sebastian moved. He shifted his body, placing himself slightly in front of me, a physical barrier between me and Alex. His posture, which had been relaxed, was now radiating pure, lethal authority. Alex, Sebastian's voice was like ice. I would advise you to be very careful with your next words. Alex's smirk widened. Or what, Seb? You'll what? Everyone will know your precious husband is the brilliant artist I married. Sebastian finished, his voice cutting through Alex's like a whip. The entire area had gone quiet. People were staring. Yes, thank you for announcing his talent to the room. Though I fail to see how my husband's passion for art is any of your concern. He took a step forward, his height and presence making Alex seem suddenly small. He let the silence hang, heavy and threatening. If you so much as look in his direction again with anything less than the respect he deserves, Sebastian continued, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, the Sterling family will find their shares in the new merger reconsidered. Do I make myself clear? Alex's face went pale. The smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure, impotent fury. He glanced at me, then back at Sebastian, and gave a tight, jerky nod before turning on his heel and stalking away. The second he was gone, the tension drained from Sebastian's shoulders. He turned back to me, his expression shifting from terrifying CEO to one of deep concern. His hands came up to cradle my face, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. Are you all right? He asked, his voice soft again, filled with a warmth that felt like a physical embrace. I could only nod, my heart swelling with an emotion so powerful it stole my breath. He had not only protected me, he had defended me. Not Mason, not the idea of a husband, but me, Micah, the artist. In front of everyone, he had claimed me. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but they weren't tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of overwhelming, unbelievable relief. I leaned into his touch, my hands coming up to rest on his wrists. I'm all right, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you. He smiled, a real, breathtaking smile that reached his eyes and lit up his entire face. He leaned forward and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to my forehead. It wasn't for the crowd. It was for us. And in that moment, standing in the sun-drenched ballroom, surrounded by a world of lies, I felt a terrifying, wonderful truth take root in my soul. I was falling in love with my husband. The world narrowed to the space between Sebastian's hands and my face. The hum of the brunch, the stares of the guests, the lingering venom of Alex. It all faded into a distant murmur. The only thing that was real was the warmth of Sebastian's skin against mine, the protective ferocity in his eyes, and the soft, lingering press of his lips on my forehead. He had built a fortress around me with nothing but his words and his will. We left not long after, the exit a blur of polite smiles and firm handshakes. In the car, the silence was different. It wasn't heavy with unsaid truths or thick with my panic. It was peaceful, charged, but with a new, humming energy. I stared out the window, not seeing the city, but replaying the moment Sebastian had called me sunlight. The penthouse felt different when we returned. I slipped off the cashmere sweater, folding it carefully on the back of the sofa. A silent thank you for the armor it had been. He won't be a problem anymore, Sebastian said, pouring 2 glasses of water at the kitchen island. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. Alex thrives on weakness. He now understands that you are my greatest strength. He won't risk his family's fortune again. My greatest strength. The words echoed in the quiet room. 1 month later, My canvases leaned against the pristine walls, splashes of vibrant color against the neutral palette. A soft, worn blanket was draped over the back of the sofa where we spent our evenings. Sebastian reading corporate reports while I sketched, our legs tangled together. The lie had been buried under a mountain of new, beautiful truths. We had told our parents a simplified version of events. Mason had a crisis of conscience and relinquished his claim, and Micah and Sebastian had found something real in the aftermath. To everyone's surprise, especially my own, they had accepted it. It turned out a stable, happy merger with Sebastian Hale was more important to them than which twin was involved. I was in the kitchen, trying to follow a new recipe, when the elevator chimed. I smiled, expecting Sebastian home early. In here. I'm attempting to not burn the sauce this time. The footsteps that entered were too heavy, the energy all wrong. I turned, wooden spoon in hand, and there he was, Mason. He looked tanned, relaxed, and utterly unrepentant. He wore a casual linen shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, and a pair of expensive sunglasses were pushed up into his messy, sun-streaked hair. He stepped into the penthouse as if he owned it, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Well, well," he said, his voice a familiar, mocking drawl that grated on my every nerve. "Look at this, the happy homemakers." His eyes, so like mine and yet so completely different, scanned the lived-in room, the blanket, the canvases, the simmering pot on the stove, before landing on me. "Mission accomplished, little brother? You held the fort." His gaze then flicked around, looking for Sebastian. "Sorry I'm late. A last-minute trip to the Bahamas. You know how it is. Needed to clear my head before the old ball and chain." The casual cruelty of it, after a month of genuine happiness, was like a bucket of ice water. My hand tightened around the spoon. All my life, I had shrunk under this, under his charm, his carelessness, his absolute certainty that the world existed for his convenience. But not today. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply watched him, my expression calm. I was waiting. For myself. Mason dropped his duffel bag with a thud. "All right, the fun's over. You can stop playing dress-up now, Micah. Thanks for filling in." He waved a dismissive hand. "I'll take it from here." He took a step forward, expecting me to shrink back. I didn't move. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it rang like a shot in the space that was now my home. Mason stopped, his smile faltering. "What did you say?" I placed the wooden spoon down on the counter, a deliberate, unhurried movement. I said no. "You don't get to take it from here." "What are you talking about?" Mason laughed, but it was brittle, confused. "The game is over. I'm back. You can go back to your little paintings now." "The game," I said, my voice growing stronger, steadier, "ended the moment you walked out. The man you left at the altar wasn't you. It was me. The man who said the vows was me. The man Sebastian stood by in front of everyone was me." I glanced at the platinum band on my finger, a ring I now wore with pride, then back at my brother. "This is my marriage. This is my home." Mason's face shifted from confusion to dawning, incredulous anger. "Your marriage? Don't be absurd. That's a legal contract between me and him." He jabbed a finger toward the empty space where Sebastian would usually be. "You were just the placeholder. The contract is with Vance," a cool, authoritative voice said from the hallway. Sebastian emerged, having entered through the private access from his home office. He must have heard everything. He came to stand beside me, his shoulder brushing mine in silent solidarity. "It doesn't specify which one. The state only cares about the signature and the ceremony, both of which were completed, legally and bindingly, by Micah." He looked at me, his gaze full of unwavering support, before turning his icy attention back to Mason. "So, legally, he is correct. It is his marriage." Mason stared at us, his jaw slack. The reality of his own careless plan was finally, devastatingly, dawning on him. He had intended to use me, but in his arrogance, he had given me everything. "This is insane," he spat, his composure shattering. "You can't be serious, Sebastian. You married him? This quiet, boring nobody? For what? Out of spite. Sebastian's arm slid around my waist, pulling me firmly against his side. The gesture was so natural, so possessive. It felt like a final, unspoken vow. "I married him," Sebastian said, his voice dropping to that low, intimate timbre I now knew was just for me. "Because he has more courage in his little finger than you possess in your entire body. I married him because he walked into a fire for his family, not away from it. I married him because when I look at him, I don't see a business partner. I see my husband." The fight drained out of Mason. He looked from Sebastian's unwavering face to mine, seeing not the timid twin he could manipulate, but a man who had found his footing and his voice. He saw a united front that he could not break. He let out a shaky, defeated breath. "So what now? What am I supposed to do?" "Now," I said, the finality in my own voice feeling powerful and right. "You leave. You go and live the unburdened life you wanted so badly. But you will do it far away from us. You will explain to our parents how sorry you are, and that you wish Micah and Sebastian well." "Or," Mason challenged, a last, desperate spark. Sebastian answered, his voice like steel. "Or I will release a statement detailing your abandonment and the subsequent fraud. The Vance Hale merger will proceed with Micah at the helm, and you will be disinherited and disgraced. The choice is yours." Mason stood there for a long moment, a ghost in the home we had built. Finally, with a sound of sheer disgust, he snatched his duffel bag from the floor. "Fine. Have your pathetic little life with your stand-in husband." He sneered, but the words were hollow, empty. He walked back into the elevator without another glance. The doors closed, and the soft whir of its descent was the sound of a chapter ending. A chain breaking. The silence he left behind was profound. I turned to Sebastian, my body trembling not with fear, but with the aftershock of my own courage. His arm was still around me. "You were magnificent," he whispered, his eyes full of a fierce, proud light. "I had a good teacher," I whispered back. He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheekbone. "It was all you, Micah. It was always you." He leaned in, and this time his lips didn't find my forehead. They found mine. It wasn't a kiss for an audience. It wasn't a chaste promise. It was a claiming, a celebration, a beginning. It was deep and slow and poured all the unspoken words of gratitude, of respect, of a profound, undeniable love from his soul into mine. When we finally broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting together, the last of the lie was gone. There was no more Mason, no more contract, no more wrong twin. There was only us, Sebastian Hale and Micah Hale, husbands, for real. The silence after Mason left was different from the one a month ago. That silence had been fragile, filled with the echoes of a shocking confession and the terrifying unknown. This silence was solid. It was the quiet of a battlefield after the war had been won. It was the peaceful, deep quiet of a home. Sebastian's arms tightened around me, and I melted into his embrace, my forehead resting against his chest. I could hear the steady, strong beat of his heart. "He's really gone," I whispered, the words more a realization for myself than for him. "He was gone the moment he chose to run," Sebastian murmured into my hair. "He just finally made it official." He leaned back, his hands coming up to cradle my face. His eyes, dark and serious, searched mine. "This is your life, Micah. Our life. No one is going to take it from you. Not ever again." And I believed him. With every fiber of my being, I believed him. The last lingering shadow of my brother's presence seemed to evaporate, burned away by the certainty in Sebastian's touch. A slow, real smile spread across my face, one that felt like it reached parts of my soul that had been clenched in a fist for years. "I know," I said, and I did. He smiled back, that rare, breathtaking smile that was mine alone to see. "Now," he said, his tone lightening as he glanced toward the kitchen. "About that sauce you weren't going to burn." I laughed, the sound free and easy. "It's probably a lost cause. We'll order in," he declared, kissing my forehead, "and celebrate." The celebration wasn't a grand event. It was the two of us sitting on the floor of our living room, leaning against the sofa, with cartons of our favorite Thai food spread out on the coffee table. My sketches were piled to one side, his tablet to the other. It was perfect. What happens with the business now? I asked, twirling noodles around my fork. I mean, with me being the official hail. Sebastian finished a bite of food, his gaze thoughtful. Exactly what's been happening. You attend the meetings you want to attend. You give your input, which, for the record, on the new marketing campaign was brilliant. You are the creative director the merger never knew it needed. He reached out, lacing his fingers with mine. You play the role you choose to play, Micah, not the one anyone else assigns to you. His words settled in my chest, warm and affirming. He had never wanted a carbon copy businessman. He had wanted a partner, and he had found one in me. A few days later, the final piece of the old world clicked into its new, proper place. We were in Sebastian's home office, a sleek, powerful room that felt more like a command center. He was on a video call with the board, a quarterly update on the merger's progress. I was curled in a large armchair in the corner, sketching, half listening to the smooth, confident cadence of his voice. He was wrapping up, and the projections exceed our initial expectations. The Vance Legacy Arts Initiative has been particularly well received, opening markets we hadn't previously engaged. An older board member, a man with a stern face and a voice that had always subtly doubted me, spoke up. A remarkable turnaround, Sebastian. And our liaison with the Vance family? Everything is settled. I looked up from my sketchpad. Sebastian's eyes met mine across the room. A slow, deliberate smile touched his lips before he turned back to the camera, his posture the picture of absolute authority and finality. The Vance liaison is perfectly settled, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. My husband, Micah, is an integral part of this company's future. He is the only Vance this merger will ever need. That matter is now permanently closed. On the screen, the stern-faced board member simply nodded. Understood. We look forward to his continued contributions. The call ended. The silence in the room was the sound of a door not just closing, but being locked and the key thrown away. Sebastian swiveled his chair to face me fully. See, he said softly. Permanent. I put my sketchpad down and walked over to him, settling myself in his lap. His arms came around me instantly, holding me close. I looped my arms around his neck, looking into the face of the man who had seen the real me hiding in a borrowed suit and had decided I was everything he wanted. I love you, Sebastian, I said, the words feeling as natural as breathing. His eyes softened, the last remnants of the ruthless CEO melting away to reveal the man who was simply my husband. He brushed a stray curl from my forehead. I love you, Micah. Sebastian Hale, he replied, his name a vow on his lips. I think I started falling for you the moment I saw you walking down that aisle, looking so terrified and so incredibly brave. He kissed me then, and it was a kiss that tasted of Thai food and trust, of shared victories and a future we had built together from the ashes of a lie. I was no longer the wrong twin. I wasn't a stand-in or a placeholder. I was Micah Hale, artist, business liaison, husband. This wasn't the life I was supposed to have, but it's the life that chose me. And for the first time, I chose it back.